Now, in the last lesson, we spoke about all the amazing things that you can do with Bootstrap and how generally awesome it is. So in this lesson, I want to show you how exactly do you get access to this awesome library? How do you install it into your website projects? So to do that, let's head into Atom and let's add our web development project folder in here so that we can create a new folder called Bootstrap Installation. And inside this folder, I'm going to create a new file called index.html. Now that we have this new website, we can go ahead and create the HTML boilerplate and give our website a title, Bootstrap installation. And under the title, which is usually where we put in our links that linked to our style sheets, for example, this is where we can add the Bootstrap framework. So if you head over to getbootstrap.com, you can see that they've got a whole page that's dedicated to how you can install Bootstrap. And it's super, super easy. So the simplest way is just to copy the Bootstrap CDN and paste it into here. And all that this does is that when your browser reads through this code to try and load up the website, once it gets to this line, it goes over to this URL and downloads the Bootstrap files if the user doesn't already have it cached on their browser. So I just want to quickly explain firstly what a CDN is. So CDN stands for Content Delivery Network, and the concept is really simple. So do you remember how previously we looked at how the internet is delivered through all of these submarine cables, right? So for example, if the server for my website is in the US, say in the West Coast, and I try to access my website from the UK, then I would probably need to go through one of these transatlantic cables, and then there'll be some more wires that goes across the land, and that request reaches my server over here. And then once that request is received, then it has to send back all of those files, the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, back through all of those routes and back to me, to my browser, so that it can be displayed on my website. Now, as you can imagine, if that is the only location where your website exists, then that's quite a long route to travel. And even though these are pretty fast cables, it still generates a delay of, maybe a few milliseconds, or if there's a lot of data that I need to fetch over, like images or videos, then it might be a delay of a few seconds. And I don't know about you, but I generally don't wait for a website to load beyond maybe like 2 seconds, at which point I presume, it's probably down or there's probably some problems. So this is where a content delivery network comes in. So instead of hosting your website just in a single location, say over here, you actually have a whole bunch of points where that website can be accessed. So that means that if my request starts off from the UK, then it will look for the location that is of the shortest distance to get that website delivered. And that dramatically cuts down on the latency or how long it takes for your website to load up. And in terms of Bootstrap, they've hosted their Bootstrap CSS files on Max CDN, which has a whole number of routing points across the world. So that means when your users are trying to load up your website that's using Bootstrap, then it can access it relatively quickly, no matter where in the world they are. So that's a quick lowdown on CDNs. And that means that when your browser reaches this link, it'll look for the shortest route to download this CSS file if the user doesn't already have it. Now, because Bootstrap is one of the most popular frameworks that a lot of modern websites will have, then it's very, very likely that your users will have already downloaded this CSS file because they've loaded up a website that uses the same file. And when that happens, your browser actually caches it, so it saves the local copy so that you don't have to download it every single time. And that's one of the other advantages of working with Bootstrap. Because it's so common, because it's so popular, your users will probably already have this file on their browser cached, then it will again cut down on the latency. So now this is one way of installing Bootstrap onto our website. And now if I go ahead and add a H1, for example, then you'll see that it gets styled using the Bootstrap framework. So let's copy the full path, go to our browser and paste this in. You can see that this font is different. So say if I go ahead and comment this out, So I'm going to highlight this line and select Command// or Control/ on Windows, hit save, and we go back over here and we refresh. Then you can see this is our default HTML styling, which is this serif font that looks kind of ugly. But with Bootstrap, it looks a little bit nicer. Now, the other way that you can add Bootstrap to your website, especially if you're creating a website from scratch, is to just copy and use their starter template. You can see that it's got the HTML5 declaration, it's got all of the things that you normally need in your website, the character set, the Bootstrap CSS, it's got a title already added for you, the body, an H1 which you can delete if you don't need, and then at the bottom it's got some Bootstrap JavaScript and jQuery. Now, we're going to be learning about JavaScript and jQuery in the next modules, but for some of the components in Bootstrap to work, they actually need some JavaScript. So for example, if something has to change in appearance on your website, so for example like a drop-down menu, then this actually needs a little bit more code than just HTML CSS, because this is kind of a functionality, right? And that's what this JavaScript and jQuery is going to help achieve. So if you wanted the complete set, and for everything that you'll implement in Bootstrap to work, then the easiest way is just to simply paste in the starter template, and now you will have everything that you need in order to start using Bootstrap. Now, the third way of installing Bootstrap is to simply download the CSS and JavaScript source code so that you can include it into your website. So instead of pointing to a URL on the internet, you can point to a relative URL that will be included with your website. So for example, you might say, go into this CSS folder and find bootstrap.css. And this is what I want to use for my website instead. Now, the downside to this is that this negates any sort of caching that a user will have. Because this is a completely separate file, the browsers will not recognize this and will not know that it's already been downloaded and already been cached. So it will have to download all of these files when it tries to load up your website, which leads to possibly a little bit more latency. So throughout this course, we'll be working with the easiest way of using Bootstrap, which is simply to get it through the CDN. And usually I tend to advise, just when you're starting out creating the websites using Bootstrap, is just to load up the example code. And this means that you'll have everything in there ready to go, and it was only one copy and paste away. So that's my recommendation, but of course it's completely up to you how you decide to do it. In the next lesson, we're going to look closer at how we can design our website and start replicating the designs using Bootstrap. So I'll see you there.